Hi everybody and welcome back to another video. This is Alan, and in this video we're going to learn what HTML is. We'll see the basics and the main concepts that you need to know in order to start coding in HTML with just this one video. So just keep on watching. HTML, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language, is the standard markup language used to create and design web pages. HTML is not a programming language, but as already mentioned, it is a markup language which handles the aesthetics of a web page. HTML allows you to organize and present information on the web, including text, images, links, forms, and more. This language has only two main concepts, which are the tags and the attributes. Tags are used to define the different elements of the web page, which we'll see in a bit, while attributes provide additional information about the elements. So the best code editor to actually code in HTML would be Visual Studio Code, and that is what we are using today. Here we are in Visual Studio Code, and it is actually a good practice before starting a project in VS Code to actually create an empty folder and then to open that folder so that every file that we create will be stored in that same folder or in the same directory, so to say. So I'm just going to my desktop. I'm creating like a blank folder here, new folder. I'm naming it Frontend Intro for the name of the series, and I'm going back to VS Code. Click here on Open Folder. Let me just find the folder that I just created. Select folder. Okay, so here on the left side we can see the directory or the name of the folder that we created, and on the right we have an icon here to add the file. So we are creating an HTML file, giving a name to it of index, and it's just required for it to end in HTML. So .html. Click on enter, and here is our file. So what we'll do right now, actually I'm just going to create a basic HTML file, and I'm going to explain to you the structure of it from top to bottom. So a quick way to actually write the basic HTML file is to write the exclamation mark here and click enter. And here we have the structure of a basic HTML file here. So let's start from the top. Here in this tag here, this is basically a document type declaration, which what it does, basically it just defines the version of the HTML that this file has. In our case, it is HTML5, but this declaration might actually just also change in the future, so you just do not need to learn it by heart. And then underneath we have the three main elements of an HTML page. Let me just indent the head and the body here. So we have firstly the HTML element, which is the root element of an HTML file, and then we have the head element and the body element. As we can see here, most of the elements in HTML have an opening tag and a closing tag. We can see that the difference between the opening tag and the closing tag here is that the closing tag also has a / in the beginning, and usually in the opening tag we put attributes to the element. So in this HTML element here we can see the attribute length equals to n. So this is basically a way to give a value to an attribute. This length stands for language, and it basically just tells the browser that the language of the text in this HTML element is in English, and we can see that the value was given to this attribute in a form of a key value pair, as we have seen in dictionaries as well. Then here inside the HTML element we have the head element. Firstly, the head element contains information, some meta information or information about the HTML file. So firstly here we see this meta tag, which basically has an attribute here of char set. What this tag here does is basically defines the character encoding, which is UTF-8 in our case. This character encoding here basically supports a lot of characters, And underneath this second meta tag that we have here, with takes here we see different attributes taking different values. So basically what it does is that it gets the viewport of each device and sets the width of it to the device width, and also sets the initial scale to be 1. So basically it gives them a zoom, an initial zoom to the web page. Underneath here we have this title element, which consists of an opening and a closing tag. So what we write in the title element is what we actually see in the tab bar or the title bar when we open a web browser. And that was it for the head element. And then the body element is basically the main part of an HTML file, where basically the whole content of the file is written inside of it. And each HTML file then ends with the closing HTML tag, which basically tells the browser that this was the end of the HTML it needs to render. What I would want you actually to do next is to go on the left panel here and click on extensions and search for an extension called Live Server. Click on it. I have actually installed it, but you just need to click install. So what this does is basically, if you would run the project as it is, for each change we would make to the file, we would need to refresh the browser. This Live Server plugin basically refreshes the browser itself as soon as we save the HTML file. And we'll actually see how this works. So to run the file here, just need to click with the right button of the mouse and go to Open with Live Server. And we'll actually see the HTML page rendered on the browser, the HTML page that we just created. Let me just make the page a bit smaller. Okay, so what this, let me just change the appearance here. So here we can see the title of our document, which is the document, what we wrote inside this title element, and then we actually don't see anything in the body. If we had written here a message like some text like hello world, and because of the plugin I just installed, I just need to save the file here with Ctrl+S, and we'll see that the browser refreshes itself and we see hello world here in the web browser. And what this Live Server plugin also did is actually that if you had tried to run the program before, you would see that the link now has changed. The Live Server plugin basically uses our computer as a server to serve the files to the browser. And here we see this is basically the IP address of our local host, then the port number, and then the file name. So basically you can see also the change in URL after you install this plugin. So what we'll see next in this video, I'm just going to introduce to you with the basic elements and the main elements that you need so that you can just start learning HTML. And basically HTML is like one of those languages that you just learn once, or you get an introduction of in like half an hour. And you basically just fill the blanks in yourself by doing projects, which we'll do in the end of the series. But for now, I'm just going to start with the paragraph element actually. So that I don't write something stupid here, I'm just going to go to ChatGPT and ask it to give me 30 paragraphs. Okay, here we have these 30 paragraphs. They seem okay. Let me just copy them and paste them in our HTML file here in the body. As you can see them here, each of the paragraph is actually separated with one another with this empty line. So it's supposed to have some spacing, but if I just save the file, we should see the browser refresh, but the paragraphs are all attached to one another. This happens because the browser does not recognize these spaces that we have left here to separate the paragraphs. For this reason, we use the paragraph element with a set of paragraph tags because they give a spacing to the text inside of it. So let me just use, so I'm writing here P, the opening tag, and then Visual Studio Code just writes the closing tag for me. I'm going to need to write the paragraph inside this set of tags. If I save the file, we should see the first paragraph being separated with a line with the remaining two paragraphs. And I will do the same thing for the other two paragraphs that we have there. Okay, so if I save the file, we should see each paragraph being separated by one another with basically a new line here. So what we could actually add to this file is we'd add the title for each paragraph. For this reason, we use an element called heading in HTML. The heading just is written by a set of tags beginning with H, and then we have 6 different headings from H1 to H6, and H1 is actually, the difference between them is that H1 is the biggest in size, and then they come to be, H2 is a bit smaller, H3 is even smaller, and then H6 is the smallest of them all. So I'm just going to begin with H1 firstly, and I'm going to write the title to the first paragraph, paragraph 1, save the file, and we should see this title here, this paragraph text here bolded, and it's bigger in size than the text that the paragraph had itself. I'm gonna use another heading for the second paragraph, let's say H2, so that you will see the difference. So paragraph 2, save the file. As we can see, the second heading is smaller but still bolded. And let me just use the smallest heading, the H6 heading for the last paragraph. Save the file, we see that the last heading is very, very small actually. I don't know if we would actually use it really in a project, but that's how big it is. Okay, let me just delete this firstly. What I want to show you next is the ordered and unordered lists. So a list basically just is used to list different elements, and we have two types of lists in HTML. The ordered lists are written with a set of tags beginning with OL, so for ordered lists. And inside this set of tags, we actually write the items of the list inside another set of tags, which are written LI. Okay, so here, let me just make a list of fruits, like apple. Pear. And orange. Let me save the file. We should see these 3 elements being ordered with an index. So basically, each of the elements will have an index starting from 1. The second element of the list has the index of 2, and so on. The only difference that this ordered list has with the unordered list is that you write it with the UL, and basically the elements are listed with like bullet points, as you can see here. Another piece of syntax I want to show you here is how to add comments in a HTML file. Let me just add some text there. This is a comment. Save the file. We see the text appear here in our browser, and to make this actually a comment, we are going to need the less than sign, the exclamation mark, 2 dashes, and at the end two dashes again, and the greater than sign. So every line in between here is basically a comment. Comments are used by us usually when programming, if we want to add a title to a piece of code or to explain some specific part of our application, either so that we remember in the future or for someone else reading our code, so it basically knows what that part of code does. But yeah, just to get that out of the way. Okay, so now I actually want to introduce to you with the table element. To write a table in HTML, we need a set of table tags. So this table element here actually is used to create a table, and how we do it is basically we add elements to each row of the table. We can declare a row of a table with this tr set of tags. And inside here, tr stands for table row. Inside here, we actually write what we want in a row to be included. So the elements of the table are written within another actually set of tags, td for table data. And here basically, firstly, we declare a row, and then we store the elements that we want the row to have. So let me write some numbers there. 7, 8, 9. If I save the file, we should see 7, 8, 9 here. If I would want to add another row to the table, let me just copy and paste here. Save the file again, we see 4, 5, and 6 then in the second row of the table. Let me just add a couple of more rows. If I save the file now, what you will see here is basically a structure of a simple calculator. If you would actually want, even in the future, to create a functional calculator, this might actually be how you can do it with an HTML table. This is how you can basically make the structure. Let me delete the table again. The element that we'll see next is the image element. As I told you, most of the elements are presented by a set of tags, an opening and a closing tag, but the image element actually just contains one single tag. Its name is img, and it takes actually a couple attributes. The source attribute is the attribute where basically we store the address where the image is stored in our project. We do not have any image in our project here, but I just downloaded something before, and basically it's a good practice to store all of the images of a project inside a separate folder. That's why I'm creating a folder here, images, and here I'm gonna store the image I downloaded here before actually. So by dragging and dropping it, I'm actually gonna change the name of this file. It's too long. It's basically a photo of a golf ball. Click on enter, and now here in this source attribute I just need to write the name of the folder where the image is written, and then the name of the file, which was golf.jpg. And actually the image also takes another attribute that has to be it takes multiple attributes, but another required one is the alternative attribute, where basically here we write a piece of text that is shown when for some kind of reason the image does not load in the browser. Then we should see the text that stands in between here. Let's say golf image or something. If I just save the file here, we see the image basically in these dimensions here. So we actually play around with the size of the image, with the image tag actually can take a width attribute to specify the width of the image, let's say 300 pixels, and the height attribute, let's say again 300 pixels, saving the file, and we see the the image now in the dimensions that we wanted it to be. Okay, so another piece of syntax or another element I wanted to present to you are the links. If you would actually want to, let me just delete the image firstly. So if you would want to add a link in our HTML file here, and we would like write it as a text here, let's say https://www.github.com. If I save the file, this link is basically rendered as a text in our browser, and we don't have an option to click on it. But for us to actually input links in our HTML files, we need to use the anchor tags. The anchor tags just begin with an A, are a set of tags, and in the opening tag we actually need to specify an attribute called href for hypertext link. Here we write the address of the URL that we want the link to the anchor to redirect the users to, pasting it here, and here we can write like whatever, like click me inside this set of tags. Here we see this click me message, click me link here. It just took some styling by default, it's underlined, it's in blue, and if I click on it, should be able to go to github.com. So if I'm going back here, basically as soon as I hover over this link, you should see in the bottom of the page the address where the links redirects us to. And we see basically many times in different pages that some malicious links just redirect us to pages that should not actually redirect us to, and in most cases you can check it where the link takes you to if you just hover over the link, and you can see the address on the bottom of the page actually. The last bit of syntax I want to show you for today, for this short introduction video, are the forms and the inputs. So basically the form element is used to take input from the user, and inside the form element we actually take the input from the user by using the input element. So the input element consists of a single tag. Let me just write an example here. We can specify different attributes to input because we have different types of inputs. Let me make the type of the first input to text, save the file. In the file we see this box here where we can input text inside of it. And actually why this form element is used is that for each input that is inputted by the user, basically the form takes some specific attributes, like an action attribute or like a method attribute as well, which basically redirects the data inputted by the user. Either it saves it to the database or does some specific operation with it. But for our case, since we are actually just seeing the visual part of inputs, we are not gonna make anything, we are not gonna give any value to those attributes. So basically we're just gonna focus on the display of the inputs. So here we saw this first input, which was a text input. Let me just create another input or different inputs actually. So let's make it of type number. If I save the file, the second input here basically cannot take characters, cannot take text, but only numbers, and we can just play with it also with these errors that we have here. An input can be of type password, so that everything that we are writing here is encrypted. We cannot see it visually, but we have this option here to basically see, just like you see when you input a password in a page. And we have also other inputs. Let me just make another input here. Inputs can be also of type submit, which basically what this does is we see this button here, submit, and basically when we input data inside the other fields. This submit button basically submits the data that the user sent to where the form should actually redirect those data. As I was explained to you before, the form basically connects the user input to some function or some database or something to do a specific operation with them. But in our case, because we haven't connected the form, in our case that would not actually work. And didn't just show you the checkbox input. Checkbox input allows us to basically select one or more of some options, and this, just worth mentioning, is that some of these inputs actually can take different attributes, like placeholder attribute, which basically tells the user to do something or what to enter in that input box, like enter a name, saving the file. We should see enter a name here. We can make the inputs to be required. So what this means is you cannot submit the form if you do not basically write anything in this input box here. So if I try to run submit, we would see this message here to please fill in this field. And basically that was just like a short introduction of inputs types there. This was HTML in under 30 minutes, just to get you started with developing in front-end. I hope you found the video useful, and if you did so, please just give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.